We as Americans have been blessed more than I think most of us even realize. We have been blessed beyond what we have been told in most cases in our upbringing, in our schooling. When you look at the connection of the Jewish people in regards to the foundation of our country, it is remarkable. Over the centuries, there's been a lot of speculation on whether or not Christopher Columbus was actually a Jewish man himself or of Jewish descent. And it goes back and forth all the time. But if you look at the Encyclopedia Britannica, it indicates that he may have come from the Spanish Jewish family in Italy, which is quite interesting because when you really look at what happened to the beginning of our discovery as a nation, it's quite interesting that his Jewish friends were very, very instrumental in arranging his meeting with the Spanish monarchs in 1486, which basically ended up turning this dream that was actually coming from his daddy. His daddy read the book of Isaiah, and the book of Isaiah said that this light will be given to the isles afar off, and that they too will hear of the good tidings. And right before Christopher Columbus' dad died, he pointed out into the ocean and says, "Send people there." Well, of course, he named his son Christopher because it means sent by Christ. Now that's quite interesting because contrary to popular tradition, it was not Spanish jewelry that paid for Columbus' voyage of discovery, but it was in fact Spanish Jews. Matter of fact, you can see this coin here. This was actually a commemorative coin honoring the 500th year of Columbus's audience with Queen Isabella. Now, it's quite interesting that the three men that are mentioned there were all Jews. And those three Jewish men were instrumental in Christopher Columbus getting an audience with Queen Isabella, which, by the way, folks, started this whole story getting going. Is everybody still with me? You all remember history? When Columbus began his voyage, he did it on the same day that he found out that the Jews were being forced, exiled out of Spain. And here's what's quite interesting. It was a Portuguese, what did I say? Portuguese. My tongue got in front of my IT and I couldn't see what I was saying. Yeah, a Jew from Portugal, thank you. He actually, now let's think about this. He actually drew up the maps for Columbus on his voyage. And if you read into Columbus's diary, you'll find some amazing references to biblical statements, but also the fact that he, at least one time for a fact, and several other times was using a Jewish calendar as his point of reference. It's interesting that the ship's doctors were all Jewish. And it was a Jew who actually was the first one to actually see the land. And in fact, the first foot that set on the New World was Jewish, belonging to Luis de Torres, Christopher Columbus's interpreter. And by the way, his name meant Joseph, the son of Levi, the Hebrew. And by the way, folks, from the beginning, the new land seemed destined by God to be a place of refuge for the persecuted and recently expelled Jews as well as Christians. And yet, folks, there's even more blessings than that came from the Jews. Many of you, if you have ever went up to Chicago, you have maybe seen this on Wacker Drive. It is a bronze and stone statue. It's been there for some 60 years. It is called the George Washington Robert Morris Chaim Solomon Memorial. And that particular statue was honoring the two men who stood with Washington during the Revolutionary War. Now, the story behind it is really interesting. But if you notice, even in the military, they actually, during World War II, they had a ship that they named after Haym Salomon to honor him because of what he did in the foundation of our independence as a nation. Matter of fact, in 1975, the U.S. Postal Service came out with a series of commemorative stamps, and one of the stamps honored Haym Salomon, and it's called the Contributors to the Cause, and it was printed on the front and on the back, and on the glue side of the stamp, the following words were printed in pale green ink. Financial hero, businessman and broker Haym Salomon was responsible for raising most of the money needed to finance the American Revolution and later to save the new nation from collapse. How many will say, thank you, Abraham? Because we got blessed, folks. How many know we got blessed as a nation? When you look at the history about this guy, it's quite interesting. He was arrested by the Brits back in 1776 as a spy, and he was in prison, but he was later pardoned. But then again, 2 years later, he was arrested and sentenced to death, but miraculously escaped. He fled to Philadelphia, and that's where he started helping our nation raise money to support the war and lead our country to freedom, where you and I can sit here tonight in freedom because of a Jewish man. Are y'all listening to this? During the cold winter of Valley Forge, when American soldiers were freezing and running out of food, it was Haym who marshaled Jews in America and Europe to provide money and relief aid to these stranded American troops and turn the course of history. Without this help, our army would have perished before they could have defeated the British. From 1781 on, he brokered bills of exchange for the American government, extended interest-free personal loans to members of the Congress, including James Madison. He ended up giving all his massive wealth to help our struggling nation get on its feet. And folks, next time you make fun of a Jew, and next time you look down your nose at a Jew, or next time you think bad because of something that the media said, understand, ladies and gentlemen, God says, I will bless you, Abraham, and I'll bless your seed, and all the families of the earth will be blessed because of you. You and I sit here today, thank God, because of the Jewish blessing. Are you all with me? Yeah. By the way, America truly owes a lot of debt to the Jewish people, and ultimately to God, the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, our gracious Jehovah, Yahweh God. Thank God for that. And yet the sad thing is, folks, anti-Semitism is springing up all over their nation. They're telling us now that the fastest growing prejudice on college campuses in the United States is anti-Semitism. There is an ongoing issue across, not just on the East Coast and the West Coast, but literally across the nation. And during times especially like this, when there's this war going on in the Middle East, they'll side with the Palestinians the overwhelming majority of the time and putting down Israel, which that should be no shock to anyone.